My friends, what South Korean intelligence monitors have just intercepted in the frozen steppes of the Veroseya region in the far east of Russia is not a simple logistical movement of troops, it's the death certificate of conventional warfare and the birth of the West's worst nightmare. The red line that North Korea spent 2 years avoiding crossing has just been obliterated under the boots of tens of thousands of Asian soldiers. Pay attention, because what you're about to see is the end of the illusion of a proxy war isolated in Eastern Europe. We are witnessing the beginning of a deadly machine that I call the Blood Coalition. Yes, the Blood Coalition, an autocratic consortium where human life is nothing more than cheap bargaining chip. The corpse market that NATO and the Pentagon are still racking their brains over, trying to figure out how to deal with it. Reports confirm that a new massive wave, estimated between 30,000 and 50,000 additional North Korean soldiers, has crossed the border. They are landing right now, enthusiastically and blindly, to march headfirst into the biggest drone and artillery meat grinder that human history has ever recorded. Because the first time the North Koreans entered the battlefield in the Kursk region in Ukraine, the result was an absolute massacre. They suffered a brutal casualty rate estimated at over 50%, falling before swarms of Ukrainian FPV drones that they didn't even understand existed. But Kim Jong-un's regime does not operate under the Western logic of preserving life. The lesson that Pyongyang drew from the disaster was not to retreat, reassess, or protect its citizens. The lesson was purely strategic. Just send more North Koreans to the meat grinder. My friends, this goes beyond all limits of barbarity. The monumental challenge that the Western powers need to overcome to maintain tactical parity is not just fighting enemy technology, but fighting the enemy who has a virtually endless supply of human bodies willing to die without asking questions. The Blood Coalition has turned trench warfare into an industrial assembly line of sacrifice, where the cold math of Moscow and Pyongyang challenges the free world's ability to produce enough ammunition to stop them. And to understand the scale of the threat and how an entire foreign army is being secretly moved into Europe, we need to get down to the tactical details of the infrastructure. Western intelligence, the United States billion-dollar satellites and data analysts have always based their estimates on the meticulous monitoring of railways and seaports. Trains are vulnerable to space espionage. The shape, the shadow, and the arrangement of open wagons stand out. For American analysts, exactly what kind of military cargo, armored vehicles, or ammunition is being transported from North Korea to Russia. Even more so today with the use of artificial intelligence on the battlefield in real time. But the Moscow-Pyongyang axis has discovered the perfect antidote to orbital espionage, and it goes by the name of the Bridge over the Tumen River. A permanent and direct road structure, quietly built and costing tens of millions of dollars, designed exclusively to create a continuous flow of weapons and personnel. Russia, with the cynicism that is peculiar to it, openly lies to the international community, claiming that the bridge was built only to boost regional economic activity. But intelligence experts know that we are being manipulated. North Korea does not have a viable civilian export economy to justify a $100 million bridge. The objective is military camouflage. When you replace train tracks with highways, you blind American satellites. Trucks with closed tarps look exactly the same from space. A convoy with 30 identical trucks could be carrying grain, wood, or it could be carrying 100 ballistic missiles and thousands of soldiers toward the front. And the engineering of deception doesn't stop at transportation. When these fighters arrive in Vladivostok, they go through an identity laundering process that violates all international laws of war. My friends, the North Koreans are immediately stripped of their insignia, given Russian military uniforms, Russian weapons and false identities, documents forged to hide their true North Korean origin. The Kremlin designed this operation in the shadows to try to conceal an entire foreign army, with the clear intention of preventing Ukraine and NATO from having immediate legal and political justification to. They knew that the official presence of North Korean troops would constitute a messy international incident, so they opted for fraud. The Blood Coalition wears Russian uniforms to die in Ukraine, and the West has the colossal task of proving to the world that the men falling in the trenches of Kursk do not speak a single word of Russian. Now subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and leave a like on the video because it takes a lot of work to make it. Picture the scene with me on the battlefield. Feel the mud and the terror of the Ukrainian front. In the shattered trenches of the East, Asian men raised in the complete isolation of Kim Jong-un's regime, with no access to the internet, no grasp of the modern world, are suddenly confronted with the most digital and ruthless war of the modern era. Men indoctrinated in the old school of war, of bayonets and human waves, being torn apart by small drones that fall from the sky with surgical precision. And in the midst of this hell, the disturbing fanaticism that makes this force so lethal and alien to the West becomes clear. Reports confirm that 2 North Korean soldiers, captured alive in Kyiv after intense fighting, tried to take their own lives with explosives as a final and desperate act of defiance, following direct orders from the supreme dictator not to become prisoners of war. They failed only because of the severity of their injuries. But Kim Jong-un's message was clear and public. He glorified not only those who die fighting, but also those who choose self-destruction to maintain the supposed honor of the regime. But the evil genius of the Russian strategy lies in how they are allocating this fanatical force. Intelligence indicates that the North Koreans are not being thrown onto the front lines solely as cannon fodder. A massive portion of these 50,000 men is taking up positions in the rear. Defensive duties and logistics work in the border regions of Kursk, Bryansk and Belgorod. And why is this a masterstroke, you ask me? In military doctrine, for every man pulling the trigger on the front line, you need at least 2, sometimes 3 soldiers in the rear, ensuring logistics, guarding warehouses and securing the routes. By having the North Koreans do the heavy and invisible work in the rear, Vladimir Putin immediately frees up tens of thousands of experienced Russian soldiers who were previously tied to these support roles and sends them directly into combat offensives in eastern Ukraine, into the human meat grinder. It's a force multiplying boost that changes the battlefield math without Russia needing to call up a single additional civilian. This brings us to the Kremlin's internal political calculus. The war of attrition has reached a point where civilian patience in Moscow is the government's Achilles heel. Putin is truly afraid of issuing mass domestic mobilization orders, the dreaded forced conscription. When a young man from Moscow or St. Petersburg dies at the front, the government faces maternal grief, social indignation, and the latent risk of civil unrest in a regime already under extreme pressure from sanctions. The Kremlin is caught between a rock and a hard place. If it doesn't replace its losses, it loses the war. If it forces the population, it loses power. And that's why the Blood Alliance is Putin's political salvation. He found a macabre formula to import cheap soldiers, shifting the political cost of death onto the shoulders of a dictator thousands of miles away. When the North Korean dies, Russia gains the territory without the burden of a Russian funeral. It's the complete outsourcing of death. A maneuver where the state imports disposable infantry and exports the black body bags, silencing internal opposition through the shedding of someone else's blood. And if you think this truth should reach all Brazilians, if you want to boost the reach of this episode so that millions can have access, you can sponsor this video now using Super Thanks.
But if you don't have the technology connected and know it's a hassle to do, use the information that appears on your screen now.
By scanning the QR code, you'll go straight to the screen where you can sponsor. My friends, the depth of this autocratic symbiosis goes far beyond the trenches. It goes down to the dark underbelly of the war economy and slave labor. South Korean intelligence estimates that Russia has already paid about $13 billion in cash to North Korea, in addition to transferring $20 billion in material value, equipment, and supplies. We're talking about figures that surpass the entire annual gross domestic product of Kim Jong-un's country. North Korea has turned human wave attacks and weapons production into its biggest export industry. Can you imagine millions of soldiers in exchange for thousands of dollars? And the Brazilian press still publishes articles saying, "Look, Brazilians, how the North Korean government managed to prosper." But they categorically deny that this is the export of slave labor. Do you believe that the North Korean dictator tells his soldiers that they are going to war to die? My friends, in blatant violation of UN sanctions, reports indicate that up to 50,000 North Korean workers have been sent to Russia, living in conditions similar to slavery. They're not just cleaning the streets. It is estimated that thousands of them have been crammed into Russian military factories, operating assembly lines 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to mass produce the kamikaze drones and munitions that are falling on Ukrainian cities. The Asian workforce is sustaining Moscow's military-industrial complex, and the result of this productive slavery is devastating. Today, data proves that North Korean factories and stockpiles are responsible for supplying almost 50% of all the artillery shells that Russia fires on the battlefield. Half of the deafening and explosive devastation echoing in Ukraine bears the stamp and forged steel from the dark foundries of North Korea. Yes, my friends, the bizarre exchange of favors between dictatorships takes on grotesque contours when we look at medical support behind the lines. While North Koreans die and slave away in Russia's frozen wastelands, North Korea has opened its doors to a veritable military rehab tourism industry. Pay attention. Hundreds of Russian soldiers wounded in the fierce fighting in Ukraine are being secretly sent to the interior of North Korea. There they enjoy exclusive facilities, heated pools, saunas, tennis courts, and VIP medical treatment to heal their mutilated bodies. The moral contrast is repulsive, I know. North Korea's healthcare system is in complete collapse after decades of international sanctions and communist mismanagement. The civilian population is perishing due to a lack of basic antibiotics and bandages. However, the little that remains of advanced medical supplies is being confiscated by the state and redirected to military hospitals in the west of the country, serving exclusively Russian soldiers. And to try to mask the civilian misery and glorify this death pact, Kim Jong-un recently inaugurated, with all the military pomp and red banners, a huge monument in the center of Pyongyang. A statue dedicated to the friendship forged in blood with Russia. Did you think it was a hospital? Did you think it was a school? Did you think it was an entertainment center? No, my friends. The communists inaugurate statues. He embraces Veterans Square, shakes hands with Russian dignitaries, and sells his people the idea of a bloody war while draining the veins of his own country to support Vladimir Putin's war effort. And what if you knew that Vladimir Putin wants to bring Brazil into this drone production pipeline, into this industrial machine to maintain his crazy war against Ukraine? And make no mistake, if you believe the threat ends with infantry and dumb artillery, we need to move up to the second level of this cyber and missile war. Intelligence intercepted the terrifying movement. The arrival of more than 120 North Korean ballistic missiles, like the feared KN-23 and KN-24 at the Russian base in Verosea. But the big turnaround, the real tactical turning point, is that these missiles weren't just shipped in crates. They arrived accompanied by on-site technical support.
A contingent of about 90 missile engineers and specialists from Pyongyang's strategic force landed in Russia and was directly integrated into the 11th and 2nd Missile Brigades of the Russian Armed Forces. They are operating systems, correcting faults, and collecting telemetry data in real time against Ukrainian targets. The North Korean KN-23 missile is an enhanced copy of the Russian Iskander. It flies farther and carries a heavier warhead. Its major historical flaw has always been its monstrous inaccuracy. They used to miss the target by kilometers. However, my friends, within military doctrine, the kill chain and war of attrition, surgical precision against cities is secondary. The real goal is to fire dozens of inaccurate North Korean missiles at civilian infrastructure. It's not about hitting a specific window. The goal is to saturate the interceptors. The tactic is to force Ukrainian anti-aircraft batteries to fire the extremely rare and expensive American-made Patriot missiles to shoot down cheap and obsolete warheads from North Korea. It's induced logistical collapse. While Kyiv burns $4 million worth of ammunition to shoot down explosive scrap from Pyongyang, Western defensive stockpiles dry up, leaving the skies open to Russian fighters and drones. But the transaction is not one-sided. In exchange for this army and artillery, Russia has opened its technological Pandora's box to Kim Jong-un. The most sensitive knowledge on the planet is crossing the border on pen drives and engineering blueprints. Moscow is passing on critical data about space satellite technology and nuclear propulsion. And, even more dangerous, the workings of area denial doctrines. A2AD and the anti-aircraft defense systems that are able to stop Western fighter jets. Kim Jong-un is using the blood of his people to extract practical knowledge of modern warfare, updating his war machine, which was previously stuck in the 1980s, to the era of network-centric warfare. My friends, the world is watching this escalation with every alarm blaring. The response from the West and its allies reflects the seriousness of the precedent that has been set. NATO has already pledged to inject $70 billion in ongoing military support for 2026 and the same amount for 2027. The Ukrainian president appealed directly to South Korea, pressuring Seoul to break its historic policy and send advanced air defense systems directly to Kyiv. Turkey, which is also a NATO member, approved the major transfer of 70 ATACMS tactical missile systems to saturate the Russian rear. But the shockwaves from this conflict point inexorably toward Asia. The movements of the Blood Coalition in the trenches of Ukraine will dictate the fate of the most heavily armed border on the planet, the demilitarized zone. Between the two Koreas, with the injection of Russian confidence and money and space technology in his hands, Kim Jong-un took a drastic step in the regional chess game. He formally revoked and abandoned any historical plan for the peaceful unification of the Koreas. And for the first time in decades, the regime officially labeled Seoul as its arch-enemy, ordering brutal military reinforcement at the borders. And to crown his new untouchable position, the dictator paraded in Beijing as Xi Jinping's guest of honor, cementing the iron autocratic triangle between Russia, China, and North Korea. If the North Korean leader comes to the cold and calculated conclusion that injecting his troops was vital for Russia to withstand the West's entire military-industrial machine in Europe, his level of aggression will rise substantially. He will know that the West hesitates in the face of brute force. Now, it's time for you to head to the comments and state your position on the future of this conflict. Now write the 2 keywords that serve as the surgical verdict of our elite analysis today. Lethal outsourcing. I repeat, lethal outsourcing. And pay attention. We are in a dark period and they can block this channel at any moment. So, we have created and activated our backup channel. If this one goes down, we already have another one ready to continue our mission, which cannot stop. Its name is Blinde a Sua Mente. Yes, Blinde a Sua Mente. You can use the QR codes by pointing your phone at the screen, which will take you straight to the subscribe button, or use the secure link that's in the description and in the pinned comment. Don't lose contact with Shimon Oliveira. Go there and subscribe. The big and terrifying strategic question that today keeps the generals at the Pentagon and in Seoul up at night continues to echo around the world. The pact signed between Putin and Kim Jong-un was tested and validated on the Russian side, with Asian blood spilled on European soil. But what if the diplomatic clock stops in Asia? If the pressure cooker explodes tomorrow and conventional war engulfs the streets of Seoul, would Russia send its bombers, its hypersonic missiles, its soldiers to defend the North Korean trenches? Would the favor be returned in the Far East? The dangerous precedent has been set. Nuclear dictatorships can now buy foreign armies to prolong wars indefinitely. The board has been turned over and the West is racing against time to understand the new rules of the end of the world. Naivety exacts a price that nations cannot afford. Ignorance takes away your own freedom. Prepare your mind. Shielding is strategic. And if you expect the mainstream media to show you the unvarnished truth that we've brought here in this analysis, you're being manipulated. The system depends on your blindness to operate. That's why we don't play by their rules. We've created a completely censorship-free environment, our intelligence bunker. Inside, the smoke screen comes down. You stop being a passive spectator and join more than 3,000 analysts who fund the truth here and pore over the map of what really happens behind the scenes of global power. Don't be a hostage to misinformation. Point your camera at the QR code on the screen or access the secure link in the description and in the first pinned comment. Join our secure base right now. And hey, look, there's a series that just premiered on Paramount Plus that is exactly about what we cover in this video, including scenes from this series. You can find where it's available and how to watch it on our channel for series and movie tips. Link is in the description, pinned comment and card. Guys, it's impressive how much cinema is portraying the truth of what's happening. Don't forget to check it out. A selection without woke nonsense, without whining, so you don't waste time on junk. Pick a title and enjoy it with your family. Now, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and leave your like on the video, because it takes a lot of work to make. And if this video was important to you and you think it should reach more Brazilians, you can exclusively sponsor this episode using the super thanks below or the information that appears on your screen, alright? Now, shield your mind. Yes, shield your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira, and I'll see you at our next meeting. See you then.